Here is a question that should not have an answer. Why is one of the most photographed beaches on Earth sitting completely empty right now, while the exact same ad for it is still playing on your phone? Picture one infinity pool, glowing turquoise, perfectly still, with not a single person in it, because the airport that used to fill it has been closed for weeks. That is the paradox sitting underneath the Middle East in 2026. The same countries spending billions of dollars to look untouchable are quietly rerouting flights, evacuating terminals, and sitting on the exact same government warning list as active war zones. Some of that fear is completely justified. Some of it is safer than the headlines make it sound. By the end of this video, you will know exactly which is which, country by country, and there is one name waiting at the very end of this list that will change how you think about the word safe. Before we start, tell me in the comments which city you are watching this from right now, because where you live changes how these warnings actually apply to you. This list is built entirely on official government advisories and verified reporting, not rumors. Stay until the very end, because the way this list closes will surprise almost everyone watching. Subscribe now if you do not want to miss it. Number 15. Yemen. An island so strange that people call it alien. Blood-red trees, empty pink dunes. Socotra was supposed to be Earth's last untouched secret. Here is the part nobody's travel reel shows you. Yemen has been at war for over a decade, and the United States has had no working embassy in the capital since 2015. The United Nations counts 21.6 million people inside this country who need humanitarian aid just to survive. Hostage International has documented 67 kidnappings of foreign nationals in just the last few years, and only 23 of those people ever made it home. Even Socotra lost its safer-than-the-mainland reputation in early 2026, when fighting intensified and its flights were suspended entirely. There is no single government in control here. The internationally recognized government holds only limited territory around Aden, while Houthi forces control the north, including the capital itself. There is no consistent police response, and nobody coming to rescue you if it goes wrong. Even aid workers now require armed escorts just to move between cities. No photograph is worth this. And the country that used to compete with Yemen for the region's tourism crown just watched its own government disappear overnight. Number 14. Syria. Palmyra's columns, Aleppo's ancient souks, a 900-year-old crusader castle still standing in the desert. For decades, this was one of the most staggering archaeological regions on Earth. Then, in December of 2024, the government of Bashar Assad fell, and a group called Hayat Tahrir al-Sham took control of the country. Small tour groups have quietly started running trips through Damascus since then, and some bloggers now insist the country has reopened. It has not safely. There is still no functioning American embassy here, and no formal tourism infrastructure exists at all, which means if something goes wrong, emergency response and medical treatment are simply not there for you. There is no reliable banking system, so every dollar you spend has to be physical cash, in a currency losing value by the week. As recently as July of 2026, small explosive devices went off in the capital itself, timed to a diplomatic visit. Outside government-held territory. Separate armed factions run their own checkpoints and their own rules, and those rules change by the week. Even experienced regional travelers describe those checkpoints as unpredictable from one day to the next. If a tour operator tells you Syria feels normal now, ask what their emergency evacuation plan actually is. Silence is your answer. And the country that helped light this entire regional fire comes next. Number 13. Iran. Persepolis. The blue-tiled domes of Isfahan. One of the oldest continuous civilizations on the planet, and under different circumstances, one of the greatest cultural trips anywhere on Earth. Instead, in 2026, it became the epicenter of a war. On February 28th, the United States and Israel launched a joint military strike against Iran, and the country's supreme leader was killed in the opening hours. Iran responded by closing the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most important oil corridors on the planet, disrupting global trade for weeks. Diplomatic channels between Tehran and Washington remain fragile at best, with talks stalling as often as they restart. There is no American embassy here. Foreign cards do not work at all. There is no Western Union, and travelers moving money out of the country have reportedly had their own bank accounts frozen back home. Iran has a well-documented history of detaining foreign and dual nationals on vague charges, sometimes for years, without formal proceedings. Here is the detail almost nobody mentions. A single Iranian visa stamp in your passport can quietly disqualify you from the United States Electronic Travel Authorization Program later. Curiosity is not worth this, not this year, and likely not for several after it. Next door, a country that was promising its biggest tourism comeback in decades, just had that comeback interrupted overnight. Number 12. Iraq. 892,000 international tourists visited Iraq in 2024 alone, a jump of 25% in a single year, and Baghdad was just named the Arab tourism capital for 2026. Kurdistan, the northern region built around Erbil and Duhok, has spent years marketing itself as the region's next hidden gem, and that reputation genuinely holds up on the ground. The rest of the country tells a very different story. In March of 2026, after Iran's supreme leader was killed, violent protests broke out near Baghdad's heavily guarded Green Zone, with crowds attempting to reach the American embassy directly. Days later, the United States pulled every staff member it did not consider essential out of the country entirely. The whole nation still carries the highest possible travel warning, even though the real danger swings wildly depending on exactly where you stand. Erbil is not Baghdad. Baghdad is not Mosul. Even the annual Arba'een pilgrimage, which draws enormous crowds from across the region every year, now carries an elevated security risk because authorities cannot screen every single person entering the country. Security forces have thwarted attacks on pilgrims before, which shows the threat is taken seriously, not exaggerated. If a headline says Kurdistan is safe, it might genuinely be right. If it says Iraq is safe, ask which Iraq they mean. What comes next is not really a country you can visit at all. Number 11. Palestine, meaning Gaza and the West Bank. Bethlehem and Jericho rank among the oldest continuously inhabited cities on the planet, and for generations they have anchored Holy Land pilgrimages for travelers of several faiths. Right now, Gaza sits under the highest possible travel warning and is completely closed to tourism, with no realistic path in for a visitor this year. The West Bank sits one level below that, officially listed as Reconsider Your Travel, meaning checkpoints, access, and day-to-day safety can shift within hours, not days, depending on the wider regional conflict. This is not a place for independent planning of any kind. Consular support in these areas is also limited, so travelers should not assume the same level of assistance available elsewhere in the region. If Bethlehem is part of a larger religious itinerary, it needs to run through a long-established, licensed operator with a genuine contingency plan for a checkpoint closing without warning. Anything looser is not a risk worth taking. Next is a country whose tourism identity was built on nightlife and food, and whose economy has been quietly collapsing for years, long before any of this year's missiles ever crossed its own capital. Number 10. Lebanon. Beirut once earned the nickname the Paris of the Middle East, built on Mediterranean nightlife, with Byblos and the Roman ruins of the Bekaa Valley sitting just outside the city. Then in 2019, the entire financial system collapsed, and it never recovered. The 2020 explosion at the port of Beirut only deepened that damage, gutting entire neighborhoods and shaking public trust further. Foreign cards are unreliable, cash is close to mandatory, and merchants routinely tack on a hidden fee if you try to pay by card at all. Now layer a live conflict on top of that. Israeli strikes on southern Lebanon and parts of Beirut have continued through 2026. Despite an April ceasefire, both sides keep accusing the other of breaking. The country still sits at the highest possible warning level, and landmines and unexploded ordnance from earlier conflicts remain scattered through parts of the south. Displaced families from the south have crowded into the north and center of the country, straining an already fragile economy further. If you check the news once a week, this is not your trip, because here conditions shift by the hour, not the week. From here, we move into the Gulf, where the story turns genuinely strange, because these next several countries spent years selling themselves as untouchable, and 2026 proved otherwise. Number 9. Bahrain. A Formula One Grand Prix every year. A compact, walkable financial district, a reputation as the quieter, cheaper cousin of Dubai. Bahrain also happens to host the headquarters of the United States Navy's Fifth Fleet, which makes it a recurring military target the moment regional tension spikes. On July 12 of 2026, Iran fired a coordinated wave of missiles and drones at Bahrain, at the exact same moment it struck Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, and Kuwait, setting off air raid sirens and emergency defense operations across the capital. European aviation regulators responded by telling airlines to avoid Bahraini airspace entirely at every altitude, a warning that stayed active for weeks. The country sits at the same elevated warning as most of its neighbors, but it carries one extra layer of risk simply because of what is stationed on its soil. If you have a trip booked around a specific event date here, do not gamble on a non-refundable rate this year. Even short layovers here now come with a level of unpredictability that simply was not part of the equation a few years ago. Book flexible. Check your airline's alert system daily. And if a missile strike near an airport sounds unusual to you, wait until you hear what happened to the very next country's main hub, not once, but twice in the same year. Number 8. Kuwait. Most travelers skip straight past this small, wealthy country on the way to somewhere flashier, which is honestly part of its charm, home to the striking Kuwait towers and a business scene most tourists never notice. In 2026, its main international hub was targeted in a wave of drone strikes, part of a campaign Iran itself named Operation True Promise 4 that triggered a total suspension of commercial aviation across the country's airspace. On June 3rd, Iranian drones and missiles struck it again, in the same coordinated wave that hit Bahrain. Flights have resumed since, but the pattern is unmistakable. This is a logistics hub that keeps getting caught in the crossfire of a war it did not start. Business travelers who used to treat this stopover as routine are now building contingency plans they never needed before. If you are using Kuwait for a tight connection this year, build in extra time, because a same-day layover here carries real risk of getting stranded if the airspace closes again without warning. The next country holds one of the most photographed ancient wonders on the planet, and this past July, its own government evacuated an entire coastal airport and seaport over a threat that had nothing to do with that wonder at all. Number 7. Jordan. Petra alone is worth crossing the world for, an entire city carved directly into rose-colored rock, paired with the dunes of Wadi Rum and the mineral-rich Dead Sea. For years, this has been marketed as the easiest, safest first trip into the Middle East, and inside the main tourist route, that reputation still mostly holds. But on July 19th of 2026, Jordanian authorities evacuated the international airport and seaport in the coastal city of Aqaba over a specific and credible threat, and the American embassy in Oman told citizens to stay away from the area entirely. Even locals described the shift as sudden, a quiet capital one week and a security lockdown the next. The borders with Syria and Iraq remain officially off-limits, and several neighborhoods around Zarqa and Rusaifa carry their own separate warnings for crime and unrest. If your itinerary depends on flying through Aqaba, route through Oman instead this year, and carry a printed copy of your government's current advisory. Petra and Wadi Rum themselves continue welcoming visitors more or less normally, which makes Jordan one of the strangest entries on this list, a country where the postcard and the government warning tell two completely different stories. The next country tells an even stranger version of that same story because its main gateway shut down completely for over a month, and most casual travelers never even heard about it. Number 6. Israel. Jerusalem's old city, Tel Aviv's beaches, the Dead Sea. Deep religious and historical weight for three major faiths, and one of the most visited destinations in the entire region. Ben Gurion International Airport, the country's main gateway, shut down completely starting February 28 of 2026, at the height of the war with Iran, and stayed closed for more than a month before reopening in early April. Since then, flight schedules have been disrupted repeatedly by fresh missile exchanges, with airlines canceling routes as recently as June. American visitors must also now complete a mandatory electronic travel authorization before arrival, a new requirement introduced amid the heightened security posture. Hotel occupancy across the country has climbed back toward normal, even as the underlying security picture stays anything but settled. Multiple independent travel guides describe the core tourist circuit, Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, the Dead Sea, and the Galilee, as calm day-to-day, with functioning restaurants, beaches, and hotels. The northern border near Lebanon and Syria is a different world entirely and remains strictly off-limits. If you travel here this year, buy fully refundable flights, download the official emergency alert application the moment you land, and learn where your hotel's protected shelter room is within your first hour. That closes the 10 countries you need to approach with real caution right now. Now watch the tone change completely, because the next 5 countries are where this region starts rebuilding and proving exactly why it is still worth the trip. Number 5. Egypt. The pyramids of Giza, the temples of Luxor, Red Sea reefs that rank among the best diving on Earth. Egypt earns its reputation, and here is the genuinely good news. That reputation held through the entire 2026 conflict. While its neighbors climbed the warning ladder, Egypt stayed noticeably lower, with disruption largely confined to North Sinai and the Libyan border. Millions of travelers still pass through Cairo, Giza, Luxor, Aswan, and the Red Sea coast every year without incident. There is a reason golden light over the Nile at sunset still tops so many bucket lists, and in 2026, that reason has not changed. The real challenge here is not security, it is the classic tourist trap gauntlet, insistent tipping culture, hustlers working the crowds outside major sites, and inflated guide or camel ride fees that catch first-timers completely off guard. This remains the most welcoming, most broadly accessible destination on the list, ideal for families, solo travelers, cruise passengers, and first-timers alike. Structured settings like resorts, guided Nile cruises, and organized tours are especially well-suited to travelers who want the reassurance of a planned itinerary, as long as you steer clear of North Sinai and agree on every price before you accept a service, never after. What comes next is stricter on the law, but it is currently building one of the most ambitious tourism visions on the planet. Number 4. Saudi Arabia. Through its Vision 2030 program, Saudi Arabia is pouring billions of dollars into an entirely new identity, the futuristic city of Neom, the rock-carved tombs of Al-Ula, a brand new stretch of Red Sea resorts, and a growing calendar of major global events. That transformation is real, and it is genuinely reshaping how the world sees this country. It even reaches religious tourism, where the Ministry of Hajj and Umrah has had to adjust entry deadlines for pilgrims because of flight cancellations and rerouting tied to the wider regional conflict. So is the risk sitting along its southern border. Armed groups operating out of Yemen have repeatedly struck Saudi border towns with drones, rockets, and missiles, documented consistently by independent security monitors, and American government employees inside the country are barred from traveling within 20 miles of that border. Beyond the border, this remains one of the strictest legal and social environments on this list, with firm rules around alcohol, public dress, and behavior that surprise plenty of Western visitors, sometimes with real legal consequences. If you want a relaxed, rules-light vacation, look elsewhere this year. But if Al-Ula, Riyadh, Jeddah, or the new Red Sea project genuinely interest you, and you research the entry laws and dress code before you land, this can be one of the most rewarding trips on this list. For travelers willing to adapt, the reward is a country transforming faster than almost anywhere else on Earth. Next is the country that took a direct missile hit and bounced back harder than anyone expected. Number 3. Qatar. Since hosting the World Cup in 2022, Qatar has built some of the most striking tourism infrastructure on Earth, and Hamad International Airport routinely ranks among the very best in the world. Doha's skyline at night, all glass and light against the Gulf, still ranks among the most striking views in the region. It also hosts Al Udeid Air Base, the largest American military installation in the Middle East, which made it a direct target in the opening days of the 2026 conflict. Hamad Airport, the Ras Laffan Industrial Zone, and the port city of Messaid all reported strikes, and on April 1st, a cruise missile hit a Qatar energy tanker inside Qatari waters. At the lowest point, the main airport was reportedly running at only 35 to 40% of normal capacity. Then it rebuilt, steadily, through the middle of the year, faster than almost any of its neighbors. Qatar's ongoing role mediating regional ceasefire talks has kept it diplomatically central, even while its own airspace stayed under caution. None of that makes Qatar unsafe to visit today. It makes it proof that wealth and infrastructure do not equal immunity, and that resilience, not luxury, is the real story here. Confirm the latest embassy alert before you fly, and watch how quickly this country turned a direct hit into a genuine comeback. What follows intercepted these same attacks and barely slowed down at all. Number 2. The United Arab Emirates. Dubai and Abu Dhabi spent 2 decades becoming global capitals of business, aviation, and luxury travel, marketed for years as the one Gulf destination immune to regional chaos. Not quite immune, it turns out, but close. The country's air defense systems intercepted Iranian missiles and drones during the coordinated strikes on July 12, and Dhafra Air Base was named as an earlier target in the opening weeks of the conflict. Through all of it, Dubai Mall and the Burj Khalifa reportedly kept welcoming visitors, and Dubai International Airport, one of the busiest long-haul hubs on the planet, kept the vast majority of its schedule intact throughout the entire year. On paper, this remains an elevated warning destination. In practice, real disruption has stayed lower here than almost anywhere else in the Gulf, thanks to a genuinely strong interception system and a government determined to keep the lights on. From desert safaris outside Dubai to the futuristic skyline of Abu Dhabi, the experience on the ground remains close to what the brochures promise. For most leisure and business travelers, this is still one of the more dependable, more rewarding options in the region. Keep travel insurance active for your full trip, because even a country handling a war this well still deserves the extra layer of protection this year. And that brings us to the country that built its entire identity on staying out of everyone else's fights. Number 1. Oman. For years, people have called Oman the Switzerland of the Middle East, a nation that stays neutral, mediates instead of fighting, and rarely makes headlines at all. Omani officials quietly hosted early rounds of the very talks meant to prevent this year's war in the first place, proof that the country's reputation for neutrality is not just marketing. Muscat's understated elegance, the dramatic Musandam fjords, and the Hajar Mountains have made it a genuine favorite for families, older travelers, and first-time visitors to the Gulf, and that reputation is still the most accurate one on this entire list. But it is no longer absolute. On June 27th, the United States authorized its own non-essential staff to leave Oman over safety concerns, and the country now carries the same elevated warning as the rest of the Gulf, driven by ongoing drone and missile activity along its shared border with Yemen. Muscat itself, the Hajar Mountains, and the Musandam Peninsula remain the steadiest, most rewarding itinerary in this entire region, and nearly every kind of traveler can still book it with real confidence, provided they simply stay away from the Yemen border. Few places on Earth pair dramatic mountain canyons with untouched coastline as effortlessly as Oman does. Sit with this for a moment. If even Oman, the calmest country on this list, could not stay completely untouched in 2026, that single fact tells you everything about how much this region actually changed this year. Here is the honest takeaway from all 15 of these countries. In 2026, there is no permanently safe country left in this region. There is only safe as of this morning. The 5 at the top of this list, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, and Oman are all still genuinely worth booking. But the gap between the postcard and the actual government warning has never been smaller than it is right now, and closing that gap is exactly what protects your money, your itinerary, and possibly your safety. Check the official travel advisory the same week you fly, not the month you booked it. Buy insurance that actually covers armed conflict disruption, not just lost luggage. This region moves fast, so treat everything in this video as a starting point for your own research, never a final answer. Whatever you decide, make that decision with real information, not just a beautiful photo. If you have visited any of these 15 countries recently, or you are watching this from somewhere in the region right now, tell us what it is actually like on the ground in the comments, because that is the one piece of information no advertisement will ever show you. If this video just saved you from a bad booking, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.